Hi guys and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I'm Behrsin, and if not, hola. So today I'm going to talk to you about culture shocks that I experienced when moving to Andalusia. Before I get started though, I just quickly wanted to mention that I did get a lot of comments on my pronunciation of paella in my previous video, so make sure you stick around till the end of this video so that you can critique my pronunciation, because I have been practicing for all of you. So I thought I would start off by just saying what I think a culture shock is. So for me, culture shock isn't necessarily negative. It's just something that you were surprised about, something you didn't know before you arrived in the place that's probably different to where you're from. So sometimes it can be negative and sometimes it can be positive. I have a couple from both. I started writing the list and then the list was getting really long because obviously Andalusia is really different to where I'm from. So I've just kind of collected the top ones that I remembered first, and I thought I would talk about them. As always, please feel free to comment below if you have any extra information to add. Let's get on with it. Let's begin with the accent. So the first shock that I got when I arrived in Andalusia was the accent. So I had been living in Germany and I got offered the job, and a week later I moved to Andalusia. And the job was based in a town called Los Palacios y Vilafranca, which is 20 or 30 minutes out of Seville city, depending on how you get there. So I didn't have much time to prepare for the move. I'd been focusing on my German, but I've spent a lot of time traveling around South America and spent a couple of months studying in Buenos Aires in Argentina. So I knew the basics of Spanish. I'm not saying that I spoke Spanish, but I knew enough that I could get by in Argentina and South America fine traveling. So it was a real shock to me when I arrived and I couldn't understand anything. No entiendo nada. I did not understand a single word. Even really basic things like greetings confused me when I first arrived there, because people would be saying like adios, buena, and other things like this that I kind of got the gist of what they were saying, but I wasn't 100% sure ever. That was something that definitely shocked me. The next thing that was quite a culture shock for me was the fact that the accent changes within Andalusia so much. And even a lot of Spanish people don't seem to be fully aware of this. So like I said, the town that I was working in was not that far away from Seville city, or Sevilla, depending on what language you're speaking. And the accent changed completely. So in Sevilla, they use that s sound, whereas where I was working, they use for every option of the lisp was a lisp, and they would remove the S's from the ends of words. Then in another town, it was more like a sound. Yeah, and you would move around the region and the accent would change completely. In Seville and Malaga, the people were much easier to understand for someone learning Spanish. I think I would actually say that living there has really helped my Spanish though, because now I find in the north it's super easy to understand, and when we do listening, like practice listening tests in class, I can always understand the Andalusians the best. And I'm quite proud of that actually. The other thing I wanted to say about the way people in Andalusia speak wasn't such a culture shock for me because I am Australian, but I wanted to mention it anyway because I find it really endearing. Endearing? Endearing. And that is the way that people in Andalusia shorten everything. Like whether it's buenos dias becomes buena, adios became adios in the house of my grandmother, abuela. So yeah, they either would shorten things or they often would use the diminutive form of things, which they do in other regions, but yeah, they do it a lot in Andalusia. So the next thing that I wanted to talk about was la última. So this confused the hell out of me when I first arrived. So I'd be standing in like around waiting for the bus, and people would come up to me and be like, última. And I always thought that they were asking me when the last bus was. So then I would start explaining to them like the time, and they would look at me confused and be like, no. So then I thought they must be saying, when was the last bus? And then I would explain, oh, it hasn't come yet, like it's gonna be here in like 10 minutes. And then they would kind of just give up on me. I don't even remember how I found out what this meant. So what actually happens is, instead of forming a queue for the bus, or like waiting in line, or alternatively, or just like scrambling when the bus comes, when people would arrive to the bus stop, they would ask who was last there and then go sit wherever they wanted. I was so confused by this. I was just like, why don't you just all form a queue or look around and see who else is there? But then summer came and I understood it so well. So in summer, it can be like 40 something degrees in Seville. So of course, you don't want to stand around in the sun waiting for a bus. And the bus shelter is only big enough for like 2 people and is super hot when it's like 42 degrees. So they would find out who last arrived, and then they could go sit in the shade, get a bottle of water, hide out the back. And then when the bus came, they could stand in a perfect line. It actually makes so much sense when you think about it. It was just that when I first arrived, it was cold, and so I was like, well, just look who's here and then get in the line. But yeah, I thought it was really funny that people kept coming up and asking me like, what's the last? And I was thinking they meant the last bus, because that's maybe what we would do in English, like, oh, has the last bus arrived, or when's the last bus? And so I was responding based on this, and people were just looking at me like, you are an idiot. So I was feeling like, oh, I'm understanding things that people are saying, like I understand that you're saying the last. But yeah, I wasn't understanding any more than that. And I remember one time there was a group of women who probably didn't really catch the bus very often, and so they ran straight to the front to get on the bus, and all of the people around me were like, oh, oh. And I was just thinking in my head, that's totally how they felt about me when I first arrived, because I really did not understand the situation that was happening. So maybe when you first arrive in Andalusia, you will think that it's chaos when you're queuing for something, but then maybe like me, you will realize a few months later that it's actually not chaos at all, and it's super, super efficiently organized. And I actually have a question for all of you guys. I've done some research on this, and all I can find is that the proper expression would be la última. And I know that you could maybe just say última, but sometimes I'm sure that people say último, and I'm not sure why, and I would really love to know whether there is a reason why you would use one or the other, or yeah, I just kind of want to know because it's been bugging me for a while. The next thing that I wanted to talk about was how people dress up their children. Whenever there was a big special occasion, like the parade they have on the 5th of January for the Three Kings Day, during Semana Santa, or another festival, any festival day, the children would always be dressed in these really cute but old-fashioned, like 1960s style outfits with like the girls would be in these cute little puffy dresses with tights or like long socks, and the boys in like kind of on the little kids, and only the really little kids. I asked a few people about it, and I never really got a definitive answer on the reason. I mean, it's really cute, so maybe that's just the reason. Please tell me if you know the reason for this. The next thing that shocked me when I moved to Andalusia as an Australian was the fact that alcohol was so cheap, and also the way they serve it. In Australia, the alcohol laws are so strict that if you ordered, say, a gin and tonic, they would measure it out exactly to be 1 shot, and if you wanted 2 shots, then you would have to pay extra for 2 shots. And it always is very, very precise. I would always order gin and tonics because it's what I drink when I don't really want to drink that much. I just kind of want to have 1 drink and sip on it and be a bit social. The problem is that I was like white girl wasted, because when they pour the gin in, they pour in so much more than they would in Australia. And in a lot of situations, they will keep pouring until you tell them to stop. And I didn't know this, so I was like looking at the glass filling up and then being like, para para. It was more like tonic with gin than gin with tonic. So the next one that I wanted to talk about was rubbish. So I'm not talking about when you're at a tapas bar and you throw maybe your serviette or something onto the ground. I'm talking about people walking on the street, usually teenagers and younger people, like drinking a can of soft drink or something like that, and then just throwing it onto the street. So I have grown up indoctrinated with Clean Up Australia and just under the mindset that you would never do this in public, and if you did it, someone would for sure yell at you. And just being so shocked when I would see people doing it. And we're talking like in a town right near like marismas where bird migration happens, and I was so shocked when I saw this. And this is not something that everyone does. The thing that shocked me the most about it was that nobody said anything. So in Australia, definitely, if you were around, if my dad was there, he would definitely say something. I would say something in Australia, but obviously I wasn't going to say something in crappy Spanish and then have them turn around and not even understand what I was saying. But yeah, I was super, super shocked that that was something that people didn't stop and tell people off about. I'm not saying that everyone in Andalusia litters by any means, but I was really shocked that no one stopped to tell them off. Especially when there was a bin 1 meter away. And that's no joke. There are a lot of bins in Spain. You can always find a bin. The next thing I wanted to talk to, which is also kind of on the eating front, is the fact that if you went to an Australian town, expect that you are going to have the worst food that you can find in the country. When I think of Australian towns, or towns in general, as with my Australian hat on, I think of places where you're not going to get very good food. You might be able to get like a pub style roast and fish and chips and bad Chinese and not much else. That's not the same in Spain. Some of the best food that I've had the whole time I've been in Spain has been in the towns, and I would have to say, especially in Los Palacios, the food is and was amazing. The quality of the food was so good. Also, they have great tomatoes, in case you didn't already know. Next thing that really surprised me when I arrived was the estufa. Estufa is like a table, and they put, it's a table, it's a bit higher than like maybe a normal table where you would sit under to eat, and it has a long rug over the top of it, and then usually a glass top, and inside underneath hangs a heater, and you sit under that in winter, and it's kind of how you can keep cozy warm. Because the thing with houses in Andalusia is they are designed for summer because it's hot most of the year and the summer is super, super, super hot. And I remember when I first moved in and the landlord was really frantic because he said, oh, we don't have an estufa for this apartment yet. And so we went out and made sure he got one, and I didn't even know what he was talking about when he was saying, I'm sorry, we don't have one of these yet in the apartment. You always see the little abuelas sitting underneath the estufa, and I remember the lady who lived next door to us, I loved her, she was so sweet. And she would always sit underneath her estufa with her door open, so you would say hi to her as you walked through the corridor on your way out for the day. And she would have all of her photos of her family, and she would be sitting watching telenovelas or whatever she was doing. But yeah, she would always be sitting in winter underneath her estufa with the photos out. Yeah, and her door open. That was the other thing. Doors open was like so much more common. So the last thing that I want to mention that was super shocking to me was when they had the Three Kings parade. So there's the Three Kings, and one of them is Balthazar, who's usually depicted as a North African, and the parade went through and no one had really told us about this, and then the carriage with all of the Balthazars came past, all with their faces painted black. And as an Australian and like coming from an Anglo culture, this was quite shocking to me. I really didn't know what to say or how to react to it. Obviously, I'm coming from a different cultural perspective, so it's hard for me to come in and judge something on my first encounter with this thing. And that is the final shock that I'm going to talk about today. So these aren't all of the things that surprised me when I moved to Andalusia. There's a lot of other things, but I'll probably cover them in another video. I hope you all enjoyed this video. Please leave comments below if there's anything that you found shocking when you've moved abroad, because I know it works both ways. Yeah, I'd love to hear anything that you guys have found weird if you've moved to Australia or maybe another Anglo culture. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please remember to subscribe, give me a like, and turn on that bell for notifications, and I will see you all very soon from somewhere else. Besos. Ba, e, ya.
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 Ella.
Paella.
Ba, paella.
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 Paella. Paella.
Paella.
Give me a clean take.
Paella. Comment below if you think that there's a possibility that I'll ever be able to say paella. Ba-e-ya.
Vamos.